after 3 days at the Nationals, I won. And that was a big deal for me at the time, because even though I'd been competing at the Opens and getting a little bit of national attention, winning the Federation Nationals was a big deal from an exposure standpoint.
Mike Iaconelli.
Just sweating it out, but I had a great tournament.
Great fisherman, nice young man, and we got to watch him. He got, look at him, unbelievable. He pulled 3 more large.
You know, looking back on that period in my life, which was, you know, the fall of 2002 into the spring of 2003, it was not good. You know, personally, my personal life was in the you know, I basically was watching my marriage crumble, my uncle dealing with cancer still, you know, my career sort of maybe not getting to the level I wanted it to. And, you know, all that stuff was happening at the same time. You know, I think in the spring of 2003 is when I really knew that my marriage was over. And it was devastating. It was crushing at the time. You know, honestly, up to that point, I hadn't dealt with a lot of personal loss. You know, besides having, you know, some people near and dear to me pass away, this was probably the most devastating thing that's ever happened in my life. And, you know, mentally, I wasn't focused. And what that did is it caused me to blame everything on fishing, right? You know, it's easy for me to talk about it now, years later, and I can look at it and see how blind I was. But at the time, when I was going through all that, it was very easy for me to blame every problem in my life, including my breakup, on fishing. It was real easy to use fishing as a scapegoat. And I was serious. You know, that spring, when all that stuff was going down, I had made a decision at that point, I think it was April or May, to leave fishing. And I was blaming fishing for everything. I was blaming fishing for my marriage, every problem. It was all fishing's fault. And I was so serious that in those months, I went back to rowing. I filled out the paperwork to go back to school. And it was my plan that fall, I was going to go back to rowing and I was going to go for my teaching certificate. You know, to me, that was the cure. I got to get out of the sport. It ruined my life. It ruined my marriage. I'm going to become a normal dude. I'm going to have a normal job. I'll still get the fish, right? That was my mindset. And I'm serious. I mean, I applied to the program. I got accepted. And that's sort of the mindset I had. It was a bad, dark time for me. And this all was happening at a time when my focus should have been fishing, but it wasn't, right? I can remember back then in the Bassmaster Classic, and I'd qualified that year. So in 2003, the Bassmaster Classic was held in the summer. And it was always an August tournament. It was in the heat of the summer. And back then, they would give you, I think it was a 3 or a 5 day practice period 1 month before the tournament started. So it was July, and I had all this stuff going on in my mind, and I wasn't focused. I was, you know, I was in a crappy place. And here I am trying to practice for the Bassmaster Classic. You know, I remember going down to Louisiana for this practice, and as much stuff that was going on in my life, somehow when I launched every day, I really was focused on trying to find the winning fish. I was. And so it was weird looking back on it. You know, there was a part of me that was still just a fish head, right? And I would put these monster practice days in. But I remember having a really rough practice. I practiced a few days in an area called Bayou Black. I practiced a few days in an area near the ramp called Des Allemands. And then I had like one more practice day left, and I decided to go down to an area called Venice, which was a really cool area. It's this marshy area where the Mississippi River dumps into the Gulf of Mexico. It's remote. You know, it was going to be a chore to get down there, but I figured, man, nothing's working right. I might as well go down there and look. And I remember having this optimism that day of practice about a new area. Practice has stunk, can't hardly catch a fish, it's hot, but this might be the place where I find the winning fish. I remember being optimistic, and then like a couple hours into practice, I remember this massive storm that came through. And the crazy thing is, when you're down in Venice, when you're in that part of the Delta, there's nowhere to hide. There's not marinas, and there's not docks, and there's not things you can get under. It's basically canals and reeds. It's all you have. And I remember this massive, nasty storm coming through, and I literally got the boat and I jammed it into the reeds as hard as I could, and I sort of created a canopy in the reeds. And man, I remember it all just sort of catching up to me, like being tired physically, being emotionally tired, emotionally drained, depressed, sad. I can't find fish. I remember all that just was hitting me at once as this massive storm came through, and I fell asleep. It was crazy, because up to that point, I can never remember a single time in my fishing career when I was practicing for a tournament or seriously competing where I'd ever even felt tired, let alone fell asleep. But I remember falling asleep as the rain's coming down, the lightning's booming, and I remember waking up. And I don't think it was that long. I think it was like an hour, maybe 45 minutes. And I remember waking up, and when I woke up, the storm was gone. You know, the storm had passed. And with all that stuff going on in my head, I looked at my watch, and I've still got, 7 hours left to go try to find the winning fish. And I remember like the very next canal that I dipped in, and the Venice is like a maze of these canals. I went down this long slough in this canal, like almost like a little creek. And I remember it getting narrow and narrow and narrow to the point where now I'm idling, and I'm so tight that the reeds are breaking on either side of the boat. And I'm just about at the point to where I'm going to turn around when I can look up there and I can see an opening. And I was like, looking back, I'm kicking up mud, and I just kept pushing, breaking those reeds. And I remember as I broke through to this opening, I shut off the motor. And it was the craziest thing, because the water clarity instantly got clean. It went from this dirty river water to like clear, like almost not crystal clear, but like dark clear. And I shut the motor off, and I just idled in, let the momentum of the boat drift me in. I'm not kidding you, there were mullet jumping. I saw like fish waking around. I saw bait. It was unbelievable. And before I even made a cast, I almost knew in my mind that was something special. But I picked up a rod, and it was game on. There were a lot of fish in this area. It was a big area, caught some quality, caught quantity. But here's the thing, the Classic is still a month away. And, are these fish gonna stay? I don't know. When I got back for the Classic, it was mid-August, it was hot, and in that time of the Classic, we had one official day to go down and practice. And I really, the goal for me in that official practice day was to learn how to get down there. You know, it ended up being over a 2-hour boat ride to get down there. And so I had to learn that in practice. And I had just enough time to actually sneak back in that spot. I had waypoints from pre-practice, and when I got back in there, they were still there. I had all the hooks cut off of my baits, but in less than an hour of practicing in there, I had like 20 bites. So I learned the route back. I went back a different route. I learned where the gas station was at, and that was the official practice. You know, going into classic competition, I had a lot of mixed emotions because it was the classic and it was a big tournament. And since I was a kid, I dreamt about this event. But I knew this was my last event. This was for sure going to be my last professional tournament I ever fished in my life. There was no doubt in my mind that I was going to fish this event. I was going to go home that summer, and that fall, I was going back for my teaching certificate. There was no way I was going to stay in the sport. You know, again, I was blaming everything wrong with my life on fishing, and there was no way I was going to keep doing it. At the same time, I think I sort of envisioned like, what a way to go out, right? In my mind, I was thinking, man, let's try to win this. Wouldn't it be great to go out on top? And you know, as the tournament started, it was one of those magical events where things just sort of fell into place. Caught him really good the first day. I was sitting in the top 5. I caught him good again the second day. It moved me into the lead.
And here's the man you've all been waiting to see, straight from Venice, Mike Iaconelli.
Yeah! Woo! What? Yeah. Did you see that? Did you see that bull on that? 4-pounder. I don't know if you got to see that with the camera, but I saw a small boil back there, and it was probably that fish chasing bait, and I pitched that bait back there, and I reeled it past the boil, and I didn't get him, and I kind of turned away, and all of a sudden, whoof. That's what I'm talking about. What are you talking about? That's what I'm talking about.
And going into the last day, you know, I had a legitimate shot to win. It's funny though, the last day, the fishing in there tightened up. The tides every day were getting an hour later. And, you know, because of the long runs, I had less than 4 hours to fish. And it all started to catch up on me on the last day. Caught a few good ones, and then I went through a long dry spell, and then I caught a few more to finish out my limit. But I had a honest to goodness 12-incher in my live well. And I knew with the competition that was in the top 5 with me, Gary Klein, Roland Martin, some of those names, the icons of the sports, of the sport of fishing, I had to catch them. And I knew, man, back then, there were no score tracker updates. There were no cell phones that were giving us updates. I didn't know how those guys were doing. But I knew in my soul, I knew that with a 12-incher in my live well, there's no way I won. I remember my camera guy. I can close my eyes and remember this like it was yesterday. My camera guy that I had with me on the boat was a camera guy from JM Productions, and he knew that we had to leave any minute. And you know, he said, I remember him saying, Mike, give me an update. Give me one last update before we leave on how your day went.
I feel comfortable. I'll tell you why. Because I absolutely did the best I could do today. I mean, I did things today to catch fish that I didn't think I had to do. I got up on a flat. I started fishing a frog. I started doing different stuff. So I adapted well today. I'm disappointed in the size I had today. I only have 2 real good ones and 1 decent one, and the other 2 were peewees. So you know, but maybe other guys struggles, you know, maybe that'll keep me in there. I don't know. I have 10 minutes left to fish, and I'm not gonna quit.
I remember saying to the camera guy, you know, basically, man, I worked hard. I did all I could do. I put everything out on the line, and you know, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. And as I'm delivering that line to the camera guy, I remember reeling in a swim worm. It was a paddle tail worm, and a fish boiled on it and missed it. And it was like, I remember that it felt like time had stopped at that moment. And I reeled that bait in, and I never even like took my eyes off the boil. I remember reeling the bait in, almost like robotic, grabbing my spinning rod. It had a weightless soft stick bait on it, clicked the bail, threw to that boil, clicked the bail back. And I remember as I lifted my rod up, one grabbed it and started swimming away with it. When I set the hook, I don't know how I can explain this, but when I set the hook on that fish, at that moment, when I set the hook, I knew that was the winning fish.
Just missed a strike there. Let's go back with this. Big one! Big one! Oh my God! This is a giant. It's got me caught on something. This is a giant, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God, it's the winning fish.
It was the longest, shortest 10-second fight I've ever had with a fish. I set the hook, he's got me caught in milfoil. I free him from the milfoil, and on a spinning rod, light line, he sort of just comes to the boat. And I remember the minute that I grabbed that fish and I was able to lip that fish and put that death grip on that fish, I remember that I knew that that was the one. And I lifted that fish in, and I honestly, I sort of like blacked out. You know, I'm able to go back and look at that moment, and I'm able to remember. And, you know, but at the time, it was almost like I blacked out.
Never give up! Never give up! Oh my God! I can't believe it. Oh my God, we were just talking about it. Folks at home, that one's for you, baby. Woo! Yeah! Yeah! Oh my God, I love it! Thank you, Lord. Oh my God. I just can't.
And, you know, I was able, with that fish, to cull that little 12-incher, and that was a 3-pound fish. You know, I remember having this feeling that if I could make it back, still have 2 hours to get back, but I remember saying at that moment, if I can get back, if I can make it back to weigh-in, I think I've won. I remember grabbing my chest in that passionate scream of never give up. And it was really, looking back on it, it was a release of everything that had built up for like 2 years, released at that moment. My entire heart and soul poured out for that moment, and it was incredible. It was a very long 2 hours back to the boat ramp. I made it back with 10 minutes to spare. Weighing in that day was surreal. Being on stage and knowing it was going to be close, having Gary Klein weigh in ahead of me. But that moment when I weighed my fish and I knew I had won the Classic, it was a dream come true.
To be crowned the 2003 Sitco Bassmasters Classic champ, you need 9.3. Watch the scales. 10 pounds, 14 ounces! Classic champion!
You know, you wish you could live it again, and I can through videos and pictures, but I remember just this enormous feeling of relief and this enormous feeling of satisfaction. I remember that when I held that trophy over my head, and it felt so light. The classic trophy's so heavy, but it felt so light. And I remember holding it over my head, and when I looked down in the crowd, I saw my family. I saw my uncle, I saw my mom, I saw my kids, and that was an incredible feeling. And I remember seeing them, and at that moment, I knew that my life had changed.
Heard you had a bad day, it ain't going your way, yeah, never give up. Heard my life was a movie, I got people trying to use me, I will never give up. It's not about where you at, it's about where you headed. And all the things they say about you only heard if you let it. I gotta put on for the kids, cause they getting the message. I'm on my knees thanking God, look at all of my blessings. Look at little old me doing real big things from a real small town. I'ma make them all proud. And these kids need a leader, I'ma show them all how. Anybody in my way, then we gon' mow them all down. Hey, from the Garden State, I got some deep roots. Fisherman drip with some new boots. I almost didn't make it, that's the real truth. They call me the general, I got real juice. Pull up in a Bass Cat doing donuts. When I'm at the Classic, the people go nuts. Heard you had a bad day, it ain't going your way, yeah, never give up. Heard my life was a movie, I got people trying to use me, I will never give up.
You know, it's funny, when I look back at it all these years later, my life really did change at that moment. And, you know, what happened the next few weeks after I won the Classic, that's kind of a blur. But what I do remember is that, you know, the opportunities that popped up and the opportunities that presented themselves, it was unbelievable.
We have a titanic battle going on. Earlier this week, about 45 minutes south in Orlando, Walt Disney World, and check out who's the Grand Marshal of the Share a Dream Come True Parade. That's right, last year's Classic champ, today's contender, Mike Iaconelli, a busy guy since he won the Classic, promoting fishing everywhere. Here, a summit meeting with Goofy right there at Walt Disney World. He's even served as a weatherman on cold pizza.
In my veins, I've been driving this train. Years in this lane, there's no stopping this flame. Cause I came to the game and I changed it to play how I like, rearranged it to my own domain. Yeah, I got what it takes, made lots of mistakes, taking shots, skipping breaks, feeling lost, feeling great, popping off, singing straight, never stopped, never changed. All the squad here to play, and I've got something to say, yeah. I work hard each and every day, I get lost in the words I say. I don't push pause, no I push play. I won't stop till I make a change.